You've built your whole life on things you never actually questioned. What's fair? What's worth wanting? What kind of person you're supposed to become? None of it was chosen. Most of it was handed to you before you were old enough to say no. Here's the uncomfortable part. The people who handed you those values weren't neutral either. They were carrying their own fears, their own wounds, their own need to feel justified. And you inherited all of it wrapped up as if it were simply the truth. This isn't a philosopher offering wisdom for you to admire from a safe distance. This is someone standing directly in front of everything you've never examined, asking why it's still standing there unquestioned. Nietzsche called himself a physician of culture, someone reading civilization the way a doctor reads a body for symptoms it's trying to hide. And what he found underneath the surface was a patient already dying. Religion was losing its grip on the West. The scaffolding that had quietly held meaning together for centuries was starting to give out, and almost nobody had noticed the cracks yet. So sit with this before anything else. What happens to you personally, not to civilization in the abstract, but to you, when the framework that told you right from wrong simply stops having any authority left? That collapse isn't a historical footnote. It's the floor you're standing on right now, whether you can feel it moving or not. Start by questioning the thing you'd never think to question, the desire for truth itself. Every philosopher before him assumed truth was better than appearance. Nobody asked why. He did. Beyond good and evil opens with a line that still lands like a slap. Suppose you want truth. Why not untruth instead? Maybe your hunger for truth isn't about reality at all. Maybe it's a need wearing the costume of a virtue. Philosophy claims to be a neutral search. He read it as closer to a confession. Every system a thinker builds carries fingerprints, their temperament, their fears, their appetites. Study a philosopher closely, and you learn less about the world than about the person who couldn't stop staring at it from one angle. Now trace where your morality actually came from. You probably assume good and evil have always meant the same thing. He treated that assumption the way an archaeologist treats a ruin. He dug. What surfaced was strange. Good and bad in their earliest form had nothing to do with sin or virtue. They described strength against weakness, nobility against its absence. The version of good and evil you inherited came later, built by different hands, under different pressure. Ask who made a value and you start to see what it was built to protect. That question about who leads somewhere uncomfortable, straight into the psychology of the people doing the building. Picture two kinds of people. One acts, one reacts. The powerful affirm life directly, without asking permission. The powerless can't act, so the frustration turns inward until it curdles into something else entirely. He named it Ressentiment. Ressentiment can't strike back, so it rewrites the rules instead. Strength gets relabeled as evil, weakness gets relabeled as good. An inability to act, given enough generations, hardens into an entire moral system. Notice the gap between affirming your own life and simply reacting against someone else's. One rises from fullness, the other rises from lack. Which one is quietly steering your choices right now? Civilization didn't stop at shaping your morality. It rewired something further in. Early humans pointed aggression outward. Society built walls against that, and instincts that once had somewhere to go now had nowhere to go but inward. This is how bad conscience gets born. The part of you that judges, punishes, and quietly tortures itself isn't a timeless feature of being human. It's a historical accident, a side effect of domestication. Notice the word debt hiding inside the word guilt, punishment, obligation. responsibility, tangled together long before any religious idea of sin arrived to organize them. You gained a richer inner life. You also gained a courtroom inside your own head that never adjourns. Then came a diagnosis that outlived the century it was written in. A madman runs into a marketplace shouting that God is dead. Nobody there believes in God anymore, and yet nobody grasps what's just been lost. God isn't dead in any literal sense. What died was the authority belief in him once carried. Science had already been quietly dismantling that authority for decades before anyone said the words out loud. Here's the paradox you're still living inside. Modern life walked away from God while continuing to run on values that only made sense because of him. He called it a kind of murder, and meant that the size of the loss hadn't been understood yet. The old moral architecture had collapsed. Something was going to rush into that emptiness. The only open question was what, which leads straight into the crisis that follows any collapse like that. Losing faith in something isn't the same as having nothing left to believe. The real problem starts when the question why loses its answer entirely. There are two very different responses to that emptiness. One looks like exhaustion, resignation, a retreat into comfort because nothing seems worth reaching for. The other tears down what's obsolete on purpose, clearing ground for something new. Here's the danger hiding inside both. Once the old certainty is gone, people rarely sit with the empty space. They reach for a substitute instead. Nationalism, ideology, the myth of endless progress. Anything promising the same certainty religion used to offer. So the real question was never whether the old gods survived. It's whether you can build something new without quietly building another idol in their place. That building process has a name, and it's probably the most misread idea in this whole body of work. Forget domination, forget brute force. Those readings miss the point entirely. Existence, on this account, is expansion, interpretation, the constant drive to transform and outgrow whatever you currently are. This force shows up the moment you push against resistance instead of avoiding it. He rejected the idea that life's only aim is chasing pleasure and dodging pain. Suffering, in this framework, isn't automatically damage. Sometimes it's the exact condition growth requires. Real strength was never about controlling other people. It was about mastering yourself, expanding what you're capable of becoming, instead of just defending what you already are. Where in your own life have you mistaken comfort for strength? Understand that drive, and you're ready for the phrase that gave an entire book its title. Going beyond good and evil was never permission to do whatever you feel like. It means interrogating where your inherited standards actually came from and what purpose they still serve. He imagines someone who doesn't simply obey the morality handed down to them, but shapes their own from scratch. Rebellion just pushes back against a rule. This is heavier. It requires standing without one. Herd morality flattens everyone into the same shape for the comfort of the group. A free spirit thinks past the assumptions their entire era takes for granted, even at the cost of real isolation. Before anyone becomes more than what they inherited, they first have to grow suspicious of it. That suspicion opens the door to the image most people get wrong. Thus spoke Zarathustra, opens with a claim that still unsettles people. Humanity is something to be overcome. You're not the destination. You're a bridge. Forget whatever history has bolted onto that word since. This has nothing to do with race or biology. It describes someone who stops inheriting and starts building instead. Someone shedding old ressentiment, along with the constant hunger for other people's approval. Think of it less as a finish line you cross, and more as a direction you keep walking toward. one that never quite arrives. Now comes the hardest test in the whole philosophy, and it doesn't ask you to believe anything. It asks you to imagine. A demon appears and tells you this, your life, exactly as you've lived it. Every joy and every humiliation will repeat itself infinitely, down to the smallest detail, forever. Forget whether that's literally true. The point is, what happens inside you when you picture it? Does the thought crush you, or does it feel like the greatest gift you've ever been handed? No escape hatch is built into this. No alternate timeline. No rewriting the past. No compensation waiting at the end. Just this life, again and again, exactly as it was. Could you affirm your own existence so completely you'd choose to live it on a loop, forever? That affirmation has a name of its own, love of fate, not resignation. Resignation grits its teeth and endures. This wants nothing to have gone differently. It pulls the suffering, the failure, the loss into the story instead of trying to edit them out afterward. Adversity stops being wreckage here and becomes material, something to build with, not just something to clean up after. What would it take for you to feel grateful for the whole shape of your life, scars included, instead of only the highlights reel? And at the far end of all this sits a warning, deliberately placed as the opposite of everything just described. Comfort has replaced creation for this figure. Security has replaced risk. Entertainment has quietly swallowed any real sense of purpose. Ambition starts to look exhausting, maybe even a little embarrassing. A world engineered to eliminate suffering often eliminates the friction that made growth possible in the first place. That's the trap hiding inside comfort, taken too far. Two futures sit in front of you. One version settles permanently into whatever is easiest. The other keeps overcoming itself, again and again, without ever arriving. So the question left behind, on purpose, without an answer, is this: do you actually want to overcome yourself, or do you quietly prefer the safety of staying exactly as you already are?